Hello and welcome to Focus on Liberia. Welcome to Tough Talking Thursday. My name is Dennis Jack and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In our show tonight, who bears the greatest responsibility for the way things are going in Liberia? And if we must find help, from whence does our help come? Where should we be looking for help to move Liberia forward? Is it the government, the opposition political parties, or the people? It is said that all power is inherent in the people. Are the people using this power to institute the government they want? Are political parties holding the government accountable as they should to change and influence policies and offering citizens a choice? Or are they simply waiting their turns to benefit from a corrupt system? Is the government doing what it's elected to do to transform the country? Or does the government see government as an eat-all-you-can buffet? Who bears the greatest responsibility to give us the change Liberia deserves? Again, is that the government, the opposition, or the people? We want to say welcome to Tough Talking Thursday. Gentlemen, I have joining us Mr. Josiah Joekai, who is our democracy analyst. Joe, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure, an honor to be here on Focus on Liberia, one of the best online TV shows. So I'm happy to be here this evening.
Thank you, Joe. We also want to welcome our chief political analyst who's joining us from the city of Philadelphia, Mr. Wilmot Wetty Kunney. Mr. Kunney, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you. Always a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
I want to also welcome a colleague who's joining us for the first time on Focus on Liberia, Mr. Mohammed Sherif. Mr. Sherif, joining us from the city of brotherly love as Mr. Kunney. Welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thanks for having me.
And Mr. Sherif is joining us for the first time, so I want to say something brief about him. Mr. Sherif, welcome. He's a proud alumni of Waplo Institute from Kilipo Kamwekan, Bwepo District. He's also a political analyst on Liberian and African issues, an advocate of good governance, justice, and national development. He's a writer of numerous articles on the exploitation of minority ethnic groups and the underprivileged masses, particularly in Africa. Mr. Mohammed Sherif hails from Grand Jida. His primary education, as I said, was in at the Waplo Institute in Kilipo Kamwekan. He had a brief period of Quranic learning under the tutelage of his uncle Al-Haji Vavi Sherif. He also went to Bishop Jubilee High, where he was the student council president in 1986, and also the valedictorian of the class of 86. He went on to the University of Liberia, where he joined the student integration movement, and he was the publication officer of the same newsletter called The Combatant. His major at LU was mass communication. He came here in the States and got his bachelor in international studies with emphasis on Africa and the Middle East. He graduated as a MA in history from LaSalle University. Currently, Mr. Sherif works with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the county assistant office as a supervisor. And Mr. Sherif is also observing the month of Ramadan. Mr. Sherif, welcome, and we are very happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the very generous introduction. I really appreciate it, and better forum to be on at this time than this. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. He calls himself the proud alumnus of Waplo Institute in Kilipo Kamwekan. Mr.
Yes,
Sherif, welcome for the first time to Tough Talking Thursday. This is where we talk tough. At the beginning of the show, we play a song by T. Michaels that say, I don't need your tabata. Tabata in the Southeastern language means nonsense. And that's why when we are talking tough, when there's nonsense, we call it as it is. So today our topic is on who bears the greatest responsibility when it comes to the way things go. When things go right, who do we credit the most when things go wrong? And who can deliver the change that we all need? And that's why we are here today. Let me start with Mr. Kunney, your opening statement to the question.
Well, again, Dennis, thank you for having me. As Usual focus on Africa is here to educate, to elevate, and to discuss all things Liberia. Our topic today is very, very important as we march forward to uh, the new democratic process of electing the next generation of leaders for Liberia. As I've indicated, the process for change, the process for change in any society is a combined product of the participation of the people and the government. The government is elected to promote the welfare of the people, but ultimately the people are the holders of power in our country. So I think in order to get a good sense as to where we are, and in order to get a good sense as to the kind of change we want in our country, uh, I believe that the interaction would be between two groups of people. First, the people, and then second, the government. And the activities of those two groups of people will define the kind of society, the kind of country that we live in.
Mr. Joekai.
Sure. I will begin by saying that our politics in Liberia or governance is actually within the framework of democracy, which gave the people the right to institute the government of their choice and to alter things, when they feel is necessary. And so the people are primary; they are fundamental in deciding the way they want to be governed, the way they want to be led. And so when they institute a government of their choice, they hold that government accountable. And those who are also competing with the governing party at the time from the political party perspective also have a responsibility to influence the decisions and policies that are made. So if you ask me, I would say that the people, the government, and the political parties in terms of the opposition, they all have responsibilities in making sure that things are right in the country. But it all begins with the people who have the power to institute the government of their choice. So the people first, then the government has to deliver on the mandate of the people, and the opposition is also there to influence the actions, the decision of the government. So that's the order in which I would definitely put that and line it up in terms of a perspective that provides a direction for the conversation.
Mr. Sherif.
Yeah, so in a country like Liberia that has over 100 and probably 180 years of independence, what you basically have on a consistent basis are economic concern or economic issues that have completely demobilized the population. Therefore, the population is not, for the most part, able, right, to stand on its feet to be independent as you have in the West. So when you talk about who's responsible, I look at a tripartite system where you have the government, the citizenry, and the collective opposition. In some instances, the collective opposition, or the disjointed opposition in some instances. But what I look at first of all is how responsible is the government to empower the people. So time and time and again, for over 160 or 180 years, you have a government, except for a brief period, that has not been able to empower the population. Right? So you have economic issues where the citizens are not able to kind of make independent decisions. You also have the opposition, right? So everybody, as we usually say, is looking for government job. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that the opposition leader, the goal of the opposition leader is to become a foreign minister or a finance minister. So if you have a viable economy where, the private sector is driving the economy instead of the public sector, maybe then you will have a stronger opposition. Maybe you will have a strong electorate, individuals who can actually, challenge the government and be able to sustain themselves. In the case of Liberia, you don't have that. So you have everybody dependent on the government. So therefore, you don't have a strong opposition. The opposition is weak, and the citizenry continue to make the same decisions over and over and again. So in order to be able, right, to answer this question, we have to look at the government, the opposition, and the citizenry. For the most part, the burden of this will have to weigh heavily on the government. So that's where I will approach this question.
Right. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. If you are just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday. And what we're talking about is who can deliver the change we want? Who bears the greatest responsibility for the way things are going? Mr. Sherif said the government. Mr. Kunney said the people. And Mr. Joekai said the people. Let's take into consideration now, as we discuss this, the role of the government, the role of the opposition political parties, the role of the people in our democracy. And for that, let me have Mr. Joekai lay it out for us, these different roles, and why you think the people bears the greatest responsibility, especially when it comes to Liberia.
So again, I will make reference to our form of government, and we have a democratic form of government. I do agree with Sherif talking about the lack of independence on the part of the people to make informed decisions that will actually lift their economic standing and improve their livelihoods. That has been a long-standing issue, entrenched governance issue in our country. Even beyond the 133 years of one-party rule, we're still struggling with that, to see a realistic empowerment of the people in terms of electing their minds, who they are, and their rights and responsibilities to their country. But when it comes to this tripartite arrangement, the people, the government, and the opposition, I will maintain that the people have a greater responsibility, because the government is not instituted in isolation. The government is instituted by the people. The people are supposed to make the kind of decision that's supposed to put people in elective positions in the country that will be able to deliver upon their mandate. If you take it from the democratic perspective and considering elections, because election is at the heart of democracy, when someone goes to the ballot box to cast his or her ballot, that's a list she is submitting to the candidate she's voting for, he or she is voting for. Voting for the human security issues, healthcare, education, food security, infrastructure development. Those are the things that they are voting for. And you can only vote for somebody to actualize those things, to deal with your list, provided the person is prepared in terms of their qualification, their experience, and their way of life. So that has to be taken into consideration. So the people are responsible basically to do that. The government, this is not in isolation. The government has a responsibility to deliver on the mandate of the people. That's why they also have a responsibility. But the good thing about it is that the Constitution guarantees that power is inherent in the people to make the change that they desire. So when they institute the government, and for example, currently the current CDC government, if the people feel that this government is not delivering upon their mandate, they have the right to go back to the ballot box in 2023 and make the change. That's how fundamental the role of the people is in our democracy. It is critical. They are the only ones that can institute that change. Not the government herself can decide to keep herself in power. It's not possible. Not even the politician, the opposition as a community depends on the people to give them national leadership. And so it is the people that has a greater responsibility in this arrangement, in this social contract, to be able to make the decision, that will lead to moving the country forward. Yeah, that's my perspective.
We'll come back to you, but let me go to Mr. Kunney. What are the expectations of the people? We in Liberia, what are our expectations, and why do you think that the people will be able, are the ones to actually carry those out? What do we want to see in Liberia, and how the people link in driving that kind of expectation or the change that we want to see? Mr. Kunney, you are muted. Unmute yourself, sir. Go ahead.
It's a great question. You see, when we talk about the people do not exist in vacuum. The people in the country are reflected by the institutions that we have, political institutions, interest groups, civil society organizations, churches, religious organizations. This is where you find the people, market people, workers' union, all of these places. So the question is, to break down the people further, you go to the people, you go to the leadership, the people that lead our people. Because it's sometimes easier to just blame the ordinary people, the ordinary Joe Blow walking up and down Broad Street or walking up and down in Kabada. We're talking about the leadership that lead our people in the different sectors of society. The question is, what kind of education are these leaders providing to the groups that they lead? What level of education, what level of conscientization, what level of civic responsibility that is being impacted to the people for the people to understand their role in the democracy, for them to make the kind of decisions that they would make? You know, it is the reason why I'm minimizing the government is that, look, every government loves power. And every government will want to have unchecked powers and unchecked accountability. So sometimes the government is not the best barometer that we use. We use our leadership in the various organizations for conscientizing our people, for educating our people on their basic situation, so that they can be informed about their basic situations and be able to make political decisions in their own interest. It is this fact, it is this aspect of our political process that is so severely lacking today. Where today you find groups coming up, the only thing they want is power for themselves. Nobody want to invest any time educating the people on their rights, on their responsibility. All they want is this: the government here is bad. You let come and move this government. So this is why.
Mr. Kunney, you didn't answer my question though. I was asking, what are the expectations? But let me go to Mr. Sherif. We'll come back to you. Mr. Sherif, you heard the both speakers. My question to you is, what are our major concerns as citizens of Liberia, and how does that rest heavily upon the government?
Well, while I maintain that this is a tripartite responsibility, I do also believe that the bulk of the responsibility falls on the shoulders of the government. For instance, in recent times, in the last week or so, about 3 weeks ago, we had a situation in Nimba County where there was supposed to be a court decision that led to ethnic violence. So we're talking about a very toxic situation that's brewing in Nimba County while the administration sits and look the other way. So, where the question for me is, where is the president? Where is the vice president? Where is anybody? There has never been a speech. There's never been a tour by the president in the ethnically divided area. There has never been an action by the president. So all we're seeing now is that individuals are being arrested from, the Mandingo ethnic group, for example. So what agenda the government is setting? So to me, the agenda the government is setting there is, we're going to look the other way. You continue to do what you do, and we're going to look the other way, right? So that's the agenda the government is setting. I have an example of a president who set a national agenda, William R. Tolbert Jr. He set a national education agenda. He went around the country, right? And this is something that was told to us by our fathers and uncles and so on and so forth. So to see someone like myself enroll in school was the result of their national policy that was enshrined. And not only that, but the president campaign all across the country. To people, to minorities who were reluctant to send their children to school, Mandingo people, he realized that these are people who are, reluctant in sending their kids to school. So he campaigned. He went to that particular community and told them that education is the bedrock. Education is the way forward. So what you have is that as a result of the president's consistency on that issue, you had a lot of Mandingo parents who listened to the president and said, well, because the president said it, so I'm going to send my kids to school. Right? Where is that national initiative now in the current leadership? The current leadership is very busy with other issues, right? Issues of division, issues of corruption, issues of injustice, and we can go on and on and on. So that's not setting a national agenda. So the leadership is responsible to set a national agenda upon which, right? So when they're elected, right? So they are in the driver's seat. The president is in the driver's seat. The vice president is in the driver's seat. Never mind, she's the vice president. These are individuals who must now, right, actualize their campaign promises. But unfortunately, that's not happening.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Joekai, let me come to you again. You have a room, right, full of people. I have a gun in my hand. I go to the door and say, you are free to leave, but with my gun pointed at the door. What kind of freedom is that? What I hear you saying is the people has the power. All power is inherent in the people. But someone's supposed to allow them, that's the government. That's not happening. So that's why that analogy of you are holding gun, but you say you are free to go. Where can I go? You're going to shoot me.
I like Webber's definition of the people that he gave, which is paramount here in the conversation. The people, it's not just something we're talking about in isolation or in vacuum. The people belong to institutions. They belong to social organizations. Our society is structured in a unique way. You have civil society that's supposed to have voice, that's supposed to educate the people on their roles, their rights and responsibilities. You have the churches, that's supposed to mold the minds of the people, or the Christian institution, religious institution in general. You have the Islamic, you have the Christians, Christianity. They have a role to play too, a significant role to play. In fact, we say they are the moral conscience of our society. They're supposed to be the moral conscience of our society, even though we've lost that. And one reference I can make, one classic reference I can make is when Louis Brown was Minister of Information. I remember the Liberia Council of Churches came together and issued a statement that corruption was too high in the country, and they decided to come up to say something about corruption and to call the government's attention to corruption. And the response of the government at the time through the information ministry was very interesting. The information minister said, yes, you may be right that there's corruption in government almost at all levels. But those who are corrupt, where do they come from? They are in your churches. They are in your mosque. That was not the kind of response that was needed from the government that has a responsibility to the people that is supposed to be held accountable. But let's look at it realistically. Where are the people? The people are the very people in civil society. The people are the very people in the churches, in the mosque. They are the very people in the kingdom halls. These are the very people who vote, who make the decision to elect officials. So these are people who are supposed to change the government, for example, that Mohammed is talking about. That the government is not responding to the needs of the people, is very unresponsive. The government is not delivering upon the mandate of the people. It's going to boil down to the people at the end of the day. That's why I maintain that they are fundamental, no matter what their roles are.
Joe, my analogy now, you are holding that gun to the door.
Coming?
I said, my analogy now, you are holding the gun to the door and you say, okay, you are free to go outside. But that means if I'm going, you're going to shoot me. So that's what the government is doing. How can the government be holding the people down and say you are free to do whatever you want? Government should empower them, right?
They're not going to hold a gun forever. The people are going to be the one to institute the change. We had one in 2017. 2017, we had a government in place before the We Are government. It was changed. The We Are government came in place. For example, we have had elections since the CDC took over. In Monserrato, it's not a government candidate or governing CDC candidate that won Monserrato senatorial election. Let's look at the special senatorial election in the 15 counties. How many the governing CDC won? I think about 3. The others were won by opposition candidates. So the point I'm trying to make here is that you cannot continue to hold a gun. Yes, you will hold a gun to some point, but you can't hold it because democracy prevails at the end of the day. There has to be an election. The people have to make a decision. And these are the people who are responsible to make the change. So when it is not working at this time, they are supposed to make the decision so that it works the next time. That makes their role fundamental in this. It is paramount. The government has a role, but the government comes in next because the people have to act before the government is instituted. That is my own logic, my own analogy of the whole thing. And even the very opposition community, they depend on the people to institute them as the government that takes over. And when it takes over, it has to deliver. If it doesn't deliver, they will not change themselves. They will not willingly leave power. And like Kunney said, I would agree that every governing party in power will definitely want to succeed themselves. Definitely, because of the unchecked issues, situations, the imbalances in government, and they enjoy, from the spoils of those situations. So they want to succeed themselves always, especially from the African perspective, governance perspective. But the people always instituting the change. So why don't they make the change in the way that they deal with the situation? They address the issues that they're confronted by, they challenged by.
Thank you. That's on paper. But let me come to Mr. Kunney. You talk about institutions because the people, if I'm in Bannersville, the people, I'm part of the people. I can't just wake up one morning and go in the street and start demanding something. It will be termed as riot. So one of the vehicles the people depend on will be the opposition political parties. The people need leaders to organize them to effect the kind of change that we're talking about, to demand those kind of policy changes that we're talking about. And that makes the opposition very paramount, and you are putting them in the last place. The opposition should be the voice of the people that can drive this thing. The opposition should be the one that is doing a sustained protest, for instance, or a sustained demand or a policy change. But to me, it looks like most oppositions are just waiting their turn so as to eat as well. So why don't you place the bunch of this burden on the opposition? Mr. Kunney, you have to unmute yourself before you talk.
I'm not putting the opposition last. That's why I said people are located in various institutions of the society. Political parties are institutions that exist in a society. And I was talking about the leadership of these institutions, the leadership of political parties, civil society, churches. These are the leadership that are responsible to bring genuine leadership to the people, educate the people so that the people can make informed decisions regarding their welfare. Now, the only role that I'm not actually promoting that is not important is the role of government, because to be honest with you, most governments are reluctant to do things against their self-interest. And this idea that when we talk about leadership or we talk about responsibilities, we quickly run to the government or to the president, it goes contrary to my fundamental belief of this imperial presidency. There are times in our country where the Liberian people demanded changes all by themselves. For example, the right to vote, the right for every Liberian to vote, it was not granted by any Liberian government. It was not granted by any Liberian president. It took the hard struggle of progressive leaders led by the likes of Amos Sawyer and other people to grant the Liberian people that right. It wasn't the government that said, okay, Liberian people today, that law where if you don't get property, you can't vote today, we change it. It is people that organize. It was the mine workers union in Bong Mine that organized for their rights. It was the Lamco Workers Union. It was the Dock Workers Union. It was the Marketing Association. It was the moral clarity provided by the All Labrador Conference, led by Bishop Francis, led by Chief Kafumba Kunney. Where are these voices today? Where are these voices today? Where are the voices in the student community today? Dennis, Liberians are all over the place welcoming a new political savior. Nobody is vetting where this man got his money from to be donating buses and other things. People are just getting on board. Basically, what I'm saying, institutions that exist in our country, they don't even vet their own people for leadership. They don't even vet their own people for leadership. So as a result, you find that situation riding to national leadership. And the same bad governance, the same bad performance is what we see. So until our people represented by the various institutions, including political parties, until they can take on the challenge, until they recognize. I know one of the fundamental role of a political party is to win political power. But part of it is to also educate the people politically. Part of it is to also create an alternative that is different from what you are fighting against. So if opposition political parties are celebrating corruption or backing corrupt individuals or recruiting corrupt individuals, the narrative that you're going to change a government that is corrupt is not going to sell with the Liberian people. That's the point I'm making. When Bishop Francis, when Tobana Tipote, when Bacchus Matthews, when all these guys were advocating for change, they didn't have corruption in their closet. Today, many of the people advocating for change are corrupt. They are blatantly corrupt to the core. They got no record. So this is why the whole issue of change in our country is the way it is. It's not inspiring. It's not motivating. It's just this whole call, let move the government because the government corrupt. That's not enough. Again, I'll go to my orange tree theory. Nobody want to plant the orange for the orange to grow for somebody to eat it in the future. Everybody want to plant the orange right now and eat it right now. So nobody want to invest time in organization. Nobody want to invest time in leadership building. Nobody want to invest time in conscientization. We still going back recruiting octogenarian people who have long past their retirement. We still bringing them back.
Thank you, Mr. Kunney. I know where you're going with that one.
Okay, then say well, let me stop before you can.
Yeah, so stop that. Mr. Sherif, are the people powerless? Are they helpless? Even though we know that I'm asking Mr. Sherif, even though we know all power is inherent in the people, they can move their government if they so desire. Are you saying the government is so totalitarian that the people are powerless?
Yeah, so I mean, so there's no kidding. I mean, so you have to understand that, the fact that, so okay, let's look at the United States, right? So you had a certain time, there was a period in which, right, African Americans were disenfranchised. You have in the South, you had the Ku Klux Klan and all of these vile institutions. And so what did it take, right? It took the people, but it also took the political courage, the will of politicians. And I can cite President Lyndon Johnson, who passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, right? And the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So all of these landmark achievements were made possible, yes, by the people rising up to protest for these rights, but it also took the political courage of a president who led the way. Who is leading the way for Liberia right now? Who is the champion of the causes of the downtrodden? Who is the champion of education right now? So the other time you had the consolidated opposition that led some type of protest in Monrovia, right? What became of it? Was there any legislation that came of it? Nothing came of it, right? Nothing. So you're going to go out there and protest, right? At the end of the day, right? The president, right, is going to do what he wants to do. The vice president is, to some extent, once she's freed up by the president, is going to do what she wants to do, right? The senators are elected. They're going to do what they want to do. So it would take the courage, right? The will of a president. Because in Liberia, you have an executive presidency. It would take the will of a president who would say, enough with this. So I'm championing the cause. This is the cause that I'm going to champion. So we keep talking about the people in this forum. But you also have to look at the fact that how many of the 4.5 million or 5 million Liberians currently residing in Liberia are actually educated? You have to look at that. What is the education policy? So education allows you the opportunity to make a wise decision. But if these people have no access to quality education, how are they going to make these decisions? It's awfully difficult. So to me, it has always been a deliberate effort, right, of marginalizing the people so that these policies, these bad policies, right, will continue to go on and on and on. You don't think Ellen Johnson Sirleaf had an opportunity to change the term limit, right? The term of the presidency from 6 years to 4 years? You don't think Ellen Johnson had the opportunity to reduce the legislative term of the senator from 9 years to 4 years or to 6 years? You don't think Ellen Johnson Sirleaf had the opportunity to reduce the term of the House members of the House of Representatives from 6 years to 4 years? Of course she had the opportunity to do so. Of course she had the opportunity to be able to campaign for that. You know why she didn't do it? Because it wasn't something favorable to her. She wanted to go 2 terms of 12 years. So it wasn't a priority of hers to do so. Now, George Weah, to his credit, has proposed, right, that the presidential term be reduced from 6 years to 5 years. He has also proposed that the term for the senator be reduced from 9 to 7 years and so on and so forth. What happened recently? That was rejected, right? So in a way, he gets credit for at least attempting to do that. But there's more that's needed. He needs to do more. He needs to do more in terms of, curbing corruption. He needs to do more in terms of really introducing quality education throughout the length and breadth of the country. So when you have that, when you have an educated citizen, when you have an informed citizen, it's easy for them now to make a decision. Lastly, when you have a citizenry, right, that's not dependent on the government for employment, right, you have a stronger private sector, then now you're giving the citizens the voice that they so desire, right? Even the opposition. Why do we have a moribund opposition? You have an opposition that's around for election purposes. So you have all these opposition that comes together now, right? Just because 2023 is around the corner. So after 2022, what happens? Everyone goes back to business as usual. So you have to have the leadership at the upper echelon, and that starts with the presidency.
Thank you, Mr. Joekai. And now we're going to open that you engage one another if you have questions. But before that, I don't know why you are not, talking about this, because the government is holding the throat of the people. It is that you are saying that, hey, if you don't like it, wait for 9 years before you change your senator because you have the voice. What happened between that time? All right. So if the government, is the one that is instituting or making these policies, and to Sherif's point, to make the people not able to voice out their distaste. There's corruption in government. There's clamped down. What do you expect the people to do? Go to war?
Absolutely not. That's not even at least thought that we have to go to war. We've had enough. But let me just underscore here that I am not saying that the government doesn't have a role in making things better in our country. I didn't say that. I just had an order of priority. And I think everyone understands that. I said clearly that there is no way making the country better can be in isolation of any of the groups that we name here that we're discussing, the government, the people, and the political parties in terms of the opposition community. I'm saying that they all have responsibilities, but I put it in an order of preference for me. And I said the people because the people institute the government. The government is bad, then the voters are bad. The people are bad. The people who made a decision to institute the government, they are bad. If the government is comprised of elected officials who are making policies, reforming policies, and changing policies in the interest of the people, then the people made a very good decision to institute the government of their choice and delivering on their part. That is my analogy. And the government has a responsibility to deliver. Trust me, in a democracy, it's a social contract. It's an agreement. The people elect you, you go there, you have to deliver. If you don't deliver, they take you down. And I am saying that we have had entrenched, horrible government ecosystem in our country. Corruption has been entrenched for more than a century. We have had full insufficiency in our country. We still have full insecurity as we speak right now in this 21st century. We can't feed ourselves. We have all the human security issues. Healthcare is still an issue. We don't even have access to good sanitation and hygiene services in our country. People get sick, they die of curable diseases in our country. We have had government upon government. We have had government in succession. And these governments have not just appeared from the blues, from the sky. They have been instituted by people who vote for elective officials, who govern them over the period. Who are the people holding the guns to their throat that you name? The people holding the guns to their throat are their own people whom they've elected. And I like to take it from the structural approach. In our society, churches lead their people for the most part to vote for candidates. People in the mosque, they discuss the candidates in the mosque. They discuss the candidates in the churches. They discuss the candidates in their traditional groups. Civil society organizations are not just independently considering their role of the electoral process. They are Liberians. They have interest in Liberia. They discuss it. We talk about Michael Francis. We talk about great leaders, Kafuma Kunney, people who directed society, led the mass of the people to make decisions, to make the changes we made in our country. Some of the changes that were made, they were not instituted or resolutions passed by our legislature. It was the action of the people who have popular actions, popular uprising, disagreement with their government. Now, these things are supposed to happen. When I say the people, I'm talking about structures of our society guarding the people and leading the people to make the right decision. It's not just our vulnerable people in the leeward counties where they have to be guarded by family members and structures, institutions to make decisions. I'm saying that we should have these leaders evolving in our society that will guide the people and change their direction in terms of how to vote so they make informed decisions. At the end of the day, the Constitution provides it is their right to decide who should lead them. That makes them fundamentally against tripartite arrangement. So next, the government has a responsibility to deliver, and they should be held accountable. The very people should hold their government accountable. Now, I understand Mohammed's point that yes, these people are not independent. These people are not sophisticated to make the kinds of decisions that they're supposed to make. But then why not don't they change the people who are here responsible to make these policies? When it is time for them to make the changes. We've been making these changes for more than 100 years. We've been electing these people for more than 100 years. So it is about time that our very civil society leader, our advocates, our people, some of our people went to jail, Bella Yala. They were jailed for African people, party democracy. They did that. It was not the government. It was people outside our government. It was student leaders. It was clergymen. It was religious leaders. They were political leaders who did that. Today we still have political parties. Why don't these political parties play their role? That's why I also hold them responsible for the change that is required. Why don't they play their role by leading the people who are supposed to vote them into power to influence the kind of change that is required? Why don't they do it? Why don't the government deliver when she knows that it's not going to go the next term because the people are going to take them down because they failed the people? So the people have to, in fact, in the framework of democracy, let me just provide this. You have stakeholders and you have stages. The primary stakeholders in any democracy is the people who make the decision, who institute government, the primary stakeholders, the
Thank you.
group of people who form primary stakeholders are the political parties and politicians, not even the government, because they have decision making in the electoral process that makes them primary. So these are people who have crucial roles to play in instituting change in the country. Whether it's political, it's economic, it's social, they have a role to play, a critical role to play.
Thank you, Joe. Let's go to our comments. And then Mr. Kunney, I would like you to respond to this one. He said, thanks for this topic of this forum. Who is responsible or accountable when things are going well and vice versa is worth discussing. However, the current leadership is the answer because any responsible parent or leader takes responsibility for his children or his team. As we say, Mr. Kunney, the buck stops with the president. Now, you are, but what's your response, Mr. Kunney, to that remark? All right, let me go to the next one from Anthony Nimler. Anthony Nimler said, the president of Liberia cannot be everywhere and function in every position at the same time. The president is like a salesman who goes out to promote his country's resources to potential investors. Why are we complaining about the president traveling around the world on private business? It says in one location we will plan that he isn't working.
Hello?
All right. Mr. Kunney, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Look, look.
Yeah.
I mean, let us not waste time. The president is ultimately responsible for whatever happened in the country, good or bad. That's not something we're going to argue on. But there are 3 points I want to respond to here. And Dennis, I'm going to push hard on you. I think you really owe an apology to Mr. Gabriel Bacchus Matthews and the scores of other Liberian progressives that went against the bullet, that died, that perished. You owe an apology to the lives of Dempster, Yala, Lucia, Matale, people that were flogged daily in Belayala. For you to say that today there is gun on the head of people. There is no gun on anybody's head. The Liberian people are voting the leaders of their choice. So don't excuse the people that there is somebody holding gun to their head. Nobody put gun to the Liberian people's head when they elected Yeke Koluba in Oro. Nobody put gun to Liberian people's head when all the other representatives, Carlos Gray, every other people were elected. So there is no gun to anybody's head. To say that there is gun to people's head, I think you owe an apology to these patriot Liberians that gave their life for multi-party democracy in Liberia. Having said that, I want to address two or three things. All of the conditions that Joe listed is true. We're facing challenges in healthcare in all of these areas. That's true. Nobody denies that. But guess what? 12 years ago, the country had a $4 billion debt. We lobbied to the international community. They were generous. They were gracious enough to waive that debt. After the $4 billion was waived, in less than 4 years, we came back again with another $1 billion debt. Can the Liberian people show us what that $1 billion was used, where it was used, what infrastructure it was used on? Nobody can point to anything where the $1 billion debt was used for. This is the kind of society we live in. And look, like I said, I'm not minimizing the role of government. The government has a role. I'm just saying government has a self-interest. Unless you hold it to account, they may not do certain things. On the question my brother Sherif talked about who playing the leadership role, you see, I'm being honest here. Clearly, Josh Weah, the current president, is playing the leadership role, whether it is in education through the free tuition college program, or the payment of wire school, whether it's in rural housing through the construction of housing units throughout the country, whether it's in rural electrification, whether it's in agriculture with the discussion on the agricultural revolution, whether it is in attractive investment that has the Guinean mining company agreement, which may even impact Mali. And this is why, I said on this show, if the progress made by this government continues, the CDC government is looking towards a one-run election. Here you hear it on FOL. I'm predicting a one-run victory for the CDC if these processes continue. Like Sherif said, it was George that provided leadership on limiting the tenure for elected officials. George, we have provided leadership on dual citizenship. George, we have provided leadership on harmonizing the salaries of government employees. These things were politically difficult to do, but this president took upon himself to use his political capital in these areas. Does that mean we don't have problems? There are problems. But the current government is trying to reverse some of the things that we have. Today, we still planting lepo in Monrovia. Today, we are still building a 4-lane road to leave from EAWA to Queensville Rail Line. That's how bad in terms of development our country is. And these are the challenges that face our people. It requires leadership. The leadership is not just with the president, the leadership is at every level.
Thank you.
Every level.
Thank you. Mr. Sherif, let's...
I wanted to make a quick intervention before Sherif come in. Would that be okay?
No, we're coming to that point where you guys will engage each other, but I want Mr. Sherif to look at historically. Let's go into our history. Who has really been responsible for some of the most progressive changes in the country, the way things have been moving? Is it the people, the political parties, or the government? Let's go into some history. You do this stuff for a living.
I think, when you look at, so historically, when you look at, let's look at the last 30 some odd years, right? So we're going to look at the last 30 some odd years. So you had President William R. Tolbert Jr., who came into office after the death of President Tubman in 1971. So what President Tolbert then embarked upon was one of the most sweeping changes ever witnessed in Liberian history. And we're talking education. So you had in Zwedru, you had the Zwedru Multilateral High School. And I'm being specific now. In Bonjima, you had the Bonjima Multilateral High School. You had the Habel Multilateral High School. So in terms of road construction, you have paved roads that were leading from out of Monrovia into the southeastern portion of the country. In terms of basic infrastructure and housing, you had the Matadi Housing Estate, you had the Stephen Tobo Estate, you had the Cabral Estate. So you had all these different things going on during the administration of William R. Tolbert Jr. And when you talk about opening the government to allow opposition voices, that happened during that time period. So this is the reason why I go back to presidential leadership, right? So presidential leadership is so important. During that time period, you had a president who opened up the country to the extent that it was even uncontrollable, to the extent that the conservatives, right, within the American Liberian ranks, warned that this could lead to some kind of catastrophe. And on the other hand, you had the opposition, right, the progressive opposition that wasn't satisfied, okay, with the level of changes that were being made. And so there was a collision course. One thing that we do have to underscore is that there was the political will, there was the effort by the president to do all of these things. And since then, we've never seen anything like it. And so where is that presidential leadership? The country is yearning for that presidential leadership right now. Okay, we don't have that. So let me go to the first thing that this president did when he came into office. So one of the things that was on his agenda, right, believe it or not, was to impeach, okay, a Supreme Court justice in the person of Kabina Janet. Through Akaras Gray, who was on your show last week, and some of his collaborators, they impeached Kabina Janet. How can a president come into office and your goal number one, your priority number one, is to impeach a Supreme Court justice? You know the last time a Supreme Court justice was impeached? That was under the military junta. So now, so this president has done something that's comparable to a military regime. So he impeached a Supreme Court justice, and Paris Gray goes on to say in some private forum, or some of his collaborators go on to say in some private forum that they really didn't know why he was impeached. But you didn't know why he was impeached, but you impeached a Supreme Court justice. So that to me is the beginning of, what I would term as misrule, right? You don't come into office and your first objective is to clamp down on the opposition. That's number one. Number two is what the president has been known for is a lot of private constructions. And so, anytime you are asked and people are saying, well, the president just built a house over here. He just built a house over here. So all of this, right, goes to tell us that the president is concerned about his own well-being and not the well-being of the Liberian people.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia, Tough Talking Thursday. My guest, Wilmot Kunney, who's our chief political analyst, Josiah Joekai, who is our democracy analyst, and first time on Focus on Liberia, Mr. Mohammed Sherif, a political analyst in our Liberian community. Now, we entered a zone which I refer to as Crossfire, right? If something your colleague have said that you don't agree with, if you have a question, or you want to rebuff or respond to your colleague, this is the time to do it in Political Crossfire on Tough Talking Thursday. Joekai, you go first.
Thank you. And I really wanted to speak to the aspect that women mentioned regarding we are taking leadership on the amendment of the Constitution. They just ended referendum. I'd like to give a historical perspective to that. It wasn't WIA. I think WIA was seeking a political dividend from the process for being referenced as the one, instituting a change to our Constitution in the interest of the people. That referendum planning goes as far back as Ellen Johnson Sirleaf instituting or constituting a special committee, the Constitution Reform Committee that was headed by Gloria Scott. And I can tell you that committee did extremely well. That committee had about 73 consultations, 10 of them in the diaspora, in Ghana and in the United States, and the rest were here in Liberia. And out of those consultations came 52,800 issues from our 1986 Constitution that Liberians put forth to say that these are the issues they have with the Constitution. And when they compiled those issues and collated them, they came up with 25 propositions. Those 25 propositions were taken to Banga, where representatives of our population from the 15 county converged and voted on the 25 issues. Among those 25 issues were the tenure limits for the presidency, for the House of Representatives, for the Senate. They all were inclusive and presented to the legislature to act. My frustration was the legislature was not able to act in the way that action was taken by the Liberian people to have a resolution adopted by the legislature so that we can reform the Constitution. Because 25 issues coming out of the 52,800 issues that Liberians put forth meant seriousness, that we have serious issues with our Constitution and we needed a comprehensive constitutional reform. So instead of the Senate embarking on a process that will lead to a comprehensive constitutional reform, they started discussing the 25 propositions in part. And part of the list that was sent to the House of Representatives to concur included the propositions on the tenures for the presidency, for the members of the House of Representatives, and for the Senate. So it did not begin with George Weah. It was not George Weah's leadership that took upon themselves to do that. They decided to implement that because it was an opportunity from the 53rd legislators action that the 54th legislature acted upon, to adopt a resolution for the current government to act on in terms of putting it to the Liberian people in an election. Notwithstanding, that even failed miserably because other propositions failed, meaning that the government was not able to exercise the kind of leadership and institute the kind of strategy and support it financially so that the Liberian people are able to overwhelmingly vote, because the issue of a referendum is about mandate. It's about the mandate of the people. So I just wanted to make that contradiction.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Sherif. Who you want to pick on? You have any? This is Crossfire now.
Well, I want to go back to that very point where Joekai just talked about, the leadership that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf had on this particular situation. I want to disagree with that, because Mr. Sirleaf had 12 years, right, to do those, to put in place those reforms. It's like half-hearted, right? You don't want to do something, but you want to pretend that you're doing it. So I don't necessarily think that she wanted to do something about reforming the Constitution. So if this was something that she was supposed to, if this was something she chose to do, right? If she opted to do this, she would have done it within 12 years. But 12 years was up. So at the tail end of 12 years, she comes around and, put this group together and go to Banga. What came of it? Nothing came of it. So I'm speaking to you as a disappointed person, not as a partisan of any party, but as a disappointed Liberian, that after all these years, after a long drawn-out civil war, you still have constitutional provisions that were put in place, right, influenced by the military junta. I mean, this is what we have. We have 6 years, a 2-term, right? 12 years of a presidency, 9 years. So look around in West Africa. Where do you have senators sitting in office for 9 years? Look across West Africa. Where do you have members of the House of Representatives sitting in the House for 6 years? And so you have a Prince Johnson who, once he's re-elected for a 3rd term, that will be 27 years. That's the lifespan of some individuals in Liberia. That is too much. And so Ellen Johnson Sirleaf had an opportunity to do something about it. She chose not to.
Thank you. Mr. Kunney, who you want to pick on here?
No, I think I need to provide clarification. There's something missing from...
Hold on. Let Kunney come in. You have time to do that.
Okay.
Mr. Kunney, you want to respond, ask question?
I'm going to pick. I say I'm going to pick on the 2 of them.
Go ahead.
Hello? Yeah. Even though Brother Sherry helped me out, to be honest with you, sometimes it's really getting ridiculous when Joe and some other people try to pass Ellie around, have somebody who are heading a 1-year interim government. This woman was president for more than a decade. And sometimes when they talk about Ellie, they pass her around like she was some kind of interim president that didn't have enough time to do anything. And Brother Sherif spoke to the fact. If Ellie wanted to change the Constitution, she would have done that. And let me tell you, the entire Constitution, the entire 1986 Constitution, it took the Amos Sawyer Committee 2 years to write the entire Constitution. And we're talking about somebody who is president for 12 years. And you want us to give her credit for what? For doing nothing? We would never give her that credit. She had no intention to change the Constitution. She had no intention to do anything. It was George Weah who came and felt the need. It was George Weah who put current into the process. That's how we went to the referendum. Yeah, the referendum failed. It failed because of the same leadership issue we're talking about. The very opposition went against the referendum, so it failed. But you cannot take the leadership question away from George Weah. You can never give it to Ellen. Now, on the issue, the place where I disagree with Brother Sherry is the impeachment of Cabinet Janet. We got to speak the truth here. The CDC has never been a parliamentary majority in our country. There is a threshold for removing a justice. That justice is removed from office by 2/3 of Senate. The CDC has never held any senatorial power close to that. Kabina Jane was impeached by opposition senators, combined senatorial vote of Unity Party, Liberty Party, and other people. The CDC alone does not have legislative power to remove Justice Janet from office. So we should stop spreading that because it's just legislatively impossible. Yes, he was impeached by the House of Representatives, which is not even controlled by the CDC. So Janet was removed by combined legislative power of Unity Party, Liberty Party, and other people that were in the place. They had the legislative majority. I just wanted to make that to stress that point. George Weah don't have the power to impeach anybody. George Weah could wish somebody could be impeached, but he does not have the power to impeach that person. That power resides in our legislature. And the legislature was dominated, is still today dominated by opposition lawmakers. They impeached Kabina Janet. Let's set the record straight.
Thank you. Mr. Joekai, you had a bone to pick with Sherif.
Very good, and it was good that women went ahead of me because he made it so nice for me. You know, he made it so nice for me. Let me put things in a proper perspective here. Mohammed and women are getting it completely wrong. We cannot distort our history. Firstly, let me clarify, women, that I am one person who have spoken about the successes and failures of Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And I am on record in my writings, in my articles, and in my publication that are available online and available in bookstores. I am on record for that. I talk about some of our excesses. I talk about them profoundly and realistically. So let me also indicate here that Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf tenure in 2009, a proposal was submitted to the legislature. 9 proposals were submitted to the legislature for them to adopt a resolution for a referendum to be held so that they will address the issue of tenure. That list of 9 proposals were submitted to the legislature, to the 52nd legislature. That was Ellen tenure. It was in 2009. And among those things proposed were the reduction of the tenure of the presidency, the reduction of the tenures of the members of the House of Representatives, the reduction of the tenures of the members of the Senate. Let us not gloss over that. What did the legislature do? The legislature threw away the aspects that had to do with tenures. It is not the president. Like you rightfully said, George Weah does not impeach. It was not Ellen's role to adopt a resolution. When the proposal was submitted, the proposal of nine propositions submitted, the legislature went ahead and adopted only 4. Only 4. And it was those 4 propositions that were put to the Liberian people in the 2011 referendum. Let's set the record straight. It was doing Ellen's tenure. It was not doing George Weah's tenure. It was 2009.
So, what's the point? Are you saying?
The point here I'm making is that women and Mohammed are emphasizing that Ellen government did not take any action to address the issue of tenure or to address policies that are tailored towards improving the lives of the people. And I am just sharpening that contradiction, that it is not true. So in 2009, when that was submitted, the resolution that was adopted by the legislature was for 4 propositions that went to the Liberian people in the referendum. The tenure of the members of the Supreme Court bench, the Chief Justice and Justices, the issue of the election date and everything, they changed the tenures to those ones. That was the first action taken by the Sirleaf government, which fell right in the legislature. The second action was, hey, we failed on amending certain portion of the Constitution. Now, let's reform the Constitution comprehensively. That's how come the Constitution Reform Review Committee was set up. And that's what they said, Constitution Review Committee. It was not that she had to be the one or her tenure to do it. It set the stage for what George Weah's government did, for what the 54th legislature did. It was not even George Weah. It was the legislature that adopted the resolution for the referendum to be held in keeping with Articles 92, 91, and 92 of the Constitution.
So Joe, let's go back to our
leaders taking. But Josh, we are taking leadership.
I don't want us to drift now.
It wasn't about that. So let's dispel that notion, and let's take our history correctly, and then let's be able to present the facts to the Liberian people. I wanted to make those corrections. And what I'm speaking to, there are records that are available that we can visit and see.
Right. Before you end there, and I will want Sherif to come in. So now, how does that relate to what we were talking earlier? The government, the people, or the opposition? So if Sherif did all these things as you stated, is it the people that make them to fail, or is it because Sherif did not get to the finish line? How do you bring in the people as being responsible for that?
Let's get the point. We were not talking about the people being responsible for the Constitution not being amended during Ellen's time. We were trying to give a leadership glory to somebody who did not institute it. That's the correction we're making before we can move forward with our discussion. The point was that the referendum that was held on December 8th last year was a referendum that was being planned and instituted, prepared by the past administration that was taken on by the legislature. Because referendums are not planned and put to the Liberian people by the executive. Let's face it. It is planned and adopted.
Thank you. I want Sherif to come in now. I don't want us to leave the point of the government, the people, or the opposition. So, Sherif, what your question?
So at the end of the day, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, I continue to maintain, led for 12 years. In 12 years, those constitutional changes didn't happen. So we don't have any accomplishment in that area. So we are still where we are. Those laws that were influenced by the military regime, we are where we are. Right? So the president rules for, 12 years. You have senators who sit there for 9 years doing absolutely nothing. You have member state representatives, House of Representatives, sit there for 6 years, and if they're reelected, they go for another 6 years doing absolutely nothing. This is one of the things that has to be addressed, right? So we're talking about what needs to be addressed in Liberia today. This is one of the things that needs to be addressed. And I want to go back to Mr. Kunney's point about, the opposition legislature being responsible for the removal of Cabinet Janet. I refuse to believe that George Weah didn't influence the opposition legislature to impeach Cabinet Janet. We have report. We have spoken to people who told us that there were bribes, right, exchanged in the legislature. The president, one of the things that he stood on when he was elected was the removal of Cabinet Janet. Don't ask me, go ask Akaras Gray, who was on your show last week. Akaras Gray promised that Cabinet Janet will be removed, and this is their priority. He had colleagues who he rallied, and they were fighting the president's fight. And this president is going to go down in history. Okay, by doing that, the president is going to go down in history as one of the worst presidents in Liberian history. These are things that you don't do and get away with, right? Despite all of the other accomplishments that he might have done, he has now interfered in the judiciary. We have a judiciary now where the Chief Justice, right? What is the issue in Nimba County right now? Cabinet Janet's home county. The issue is you have ethnic tension going on in Nimba County because you have a lot of the judges sitting in Nimba County who are members of the Mano ethnic group. And so decisions that are being rendered in favor, right, on tribal lines. And so it's something that needs to be addressed, but I don't think this president has the foresight, has, the intellectual awareness to address these issues. He may not mean any harm, but I don't think he has the intellectual awareness and capability address these very national issues. And so
Thank you.
until these issues are addressed, we are sitting on a powder keg of potential conflict again. And I'm afraid to say that, you know, if this happens again, it's going to be on tribal lines. And this is time to show presidential leadership. Unfortunately, that's lacking right now.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we have less than 15 minutes to end the show. And so, Mr. Kunney, you wanted to come in, and then we go into our last segment, which is the political nonsense that you see around. But let me let you land your points on that.
My mouth is hardened.
Unfortunately, Joe wasted our time on the history of this amendment process. The fact of the matter is there was no leadership shown on the issue by Ellen. If the Constitution was to be amended, if Ellen wanted those provisions to be amended, they were being amended. She didn't show no leadership. After the whole entire Constitution was drafted in 2 years. There is no justification why our Constitution could not have been amended in the 12 years. So he just wasted our time with all that history. No, the point was not that Ellen, nobody talked about Constitution amendment during Ellen time. The point was that she did not show any leadership to get it accomplished. It was not done. It is still something to be done. 12 years was enough for us to get it done. It was not done. That's the point we're making. The second point, my brother Sherif making on this power of the president, he's making this president to be so imperial. And I'm getting
Mr. Kunney, Mr. Kunney, Mr. Kunney, I don't want us to drift too much, because we're talking about constitutional change referendum. Now it's Kabina Jane. We're drifting a little bit. Let's come back. The government,
no,
the people.
I want to connect it. And I want to connect it. That's why I want to connect it. I want to connect
it. So you are 1 more minute, sir.
Okay. So, like I said, I mean, in any impeachment process, politicians will take different style of impeachment. You know, different politicians want certain people to be impeached. But what Brother Sherif cannot argue is that the power to impeach rests with the legislature. Senators took the decision to remove Kabina. And then connecting it to our topic today, what was the repercussion that those senators faced? The very people elected some of those people who took that vote. They did not suffer any penalty. Some of them are still sitting in the legislature today, and guess what? The very people will re-elect them again. You see, the safeguard we have in democracy is that even if a politician make an unpopular decision, you suffer loss at the poll. When Bill Clinton was viewed to be unfairly impeached by the legislature, when thanking the Republicans suffered loss of seats. So this is the relationship I'm trying to draw, you know, because you cannot, you know, it's a political field. Everybody is playing the field, but there should be checks and balances here. So if opposition lawmakers go and remove the justice, and some other lawmakers are re-elected or stand to be elected, the question is, who is paying the price for that? And you're not going to blame the president who don't even have no vote in the matter. It's just an unfair blame game.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. Now we'll enter our last segment for the night, which is, what is the one tabata you want to point out in the country? And after this, you're going to be making your final statement on the topic for the night. But let's just go around the room so that you can point out one tabata. As we said in the beginning, we are talking tough and there's nonsense going on. Let's be bold to point it out. Mr. Kunney, you go first.
The one tabata, the real tabata I hear in Liberia is this noise from the CPP of them trying to take an octogenarian to be their standard bearer, or take an unknown businessman with no record, with no attachment to the Liberian community, either in the diaspora or at home, to be standard bearer, whether that is Alexander Cummings with no record whatsoever of involvement with Liberian communities in the diaspora where he resided, or with no serious record of attachment in Liberia in terms of political governance, or to the almost, very past age of retirement of the Judarian Joseph Boaka being a standard bearer. That's the worst tabata the CPP can think about to bring upon the Liberian people.
Thank you. Mr. Joekai.
Well, before I say what my Tabata, what I see as Tabata, I like to provide this education because the gap is responsible for the notion of my two colleagues, Wema and Mohammed, with regards to how we make changes to our laws in our country. We have Article 91 and Article 92 that provides for the way we proceed a referendum in our country. Those were followed, and that is why we had a referendum in 2011 to amend certain provision of the Constitution. And one of the best things ever that happened in our history to address economic issue was for us to deal with the absolute majority system. You can imagine if we're still having election with all the candidates for 73 seats or for 103 seats in the legislature going to second round. You will not even have your current budget standing, will not even support it. We were able to address that. In 2011, we adopted a simple majority system that we are going by today. So change was made. And a move was made for us to reform the entire Constitution in keeping with Article 91 and 92. So I wanted to provide, it's not the president. Like William rightfully said, the president does not impeach. It is the legislature. It is not the president that adopts resolution for referendum to be held. In keeping with those two provisions of the 1986 Constitution, the legislature has the authority to turn majority to institute that. So not the president. So changing the Constitution is the people and the legislature. So the Tabata I see in Liberia, like Wema was talking about, you know, a seasoned diplomat and a veteran administrator who is well recognized with a great name recognition in the country, talking about is the Tabata that he see that people trying to push for the presidency, or a businessman like Cummings, according to him, who doesn't have any relationship with the people in terms of people in the Liberians in the diaspora in the country pushing to be president, the CPP politics. But I will also say that it is really demeaning for us to have somebody who actually a team from the day he became president, whose background is not in any way related to any form of governance or administrative work, like corporate or political, who is currently President George. I think that is responsible for the toxic nature of Monrovia and the disorderliness in Monrovia as far as governance is concerned, the irresponsible leadership. I think that's the Tabata that I see in the country, and it's going to be there for some time, because the Liberian people, again, as I said, it is fundamental on their part. They have the right. They have to change it in 2023, or they have to keep it. That makes them very important, paramount in the whole issue of making change to make things better in Liberia. Thank you.
Mr. Sherif, what is the Tabata you see?
The Tabata I have to go with is the judiciary. I have to go to judiciary. The judiciary is the bedrock of any viable democracy. And so right now we have a judiciary that is, you know, in the process, or have been for some time now, in the process of creating the seeds of division and violence. And why I say that, I point back to the current issue in Antanima County, where as a result of a decision made by a circuit judge in Sani Koli, I understand what we were told is that a rate was issued. Rates were issued, and these rates were issued for individuals who are deceased, who can obviously not appear in court. And so a default judgment was rendered against these deceased individuals, landowners, and because they didn't appear in court, so a default judgment was issued. And the issue now is winding its way to the Supreme Court. I'm afraid that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who is a Mano from Nimba County, who is not going to recuse himself, it is an issue. It really, really is an issue. And this is something that the president, the leadership, needs to pay close attention to.
Thank you.
And he needs to recuse.
Thank you. And this is one issue I will weigh on as well. The Tabata I see is I watched a clip, they say from Maryland County, of a cotton tree that is supposed to be over 100 years old, and it was cut down because they believe there's witchcraft in it. And so when they cut that down, people were rejoicing that ding dong, the witch is gone. Well, if it were for any safety issue, they cut it down, I understand. But a cotton tree, a tree that is over 100 years old, that's a piece of history. And cutting it down because of witchcraft, complete tabata in my view. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the night. We have 3 minutes, so let's go 1 minute each to give your closing remarks. Again, we begin with where we started. Who bears the greatest responsibility for the way things are going in our country, and where do we look for help? Is it the government, the opposition, or the people? Mr. Sherif, you go first this time.
I believe that, and I still maintain, this is a tripartite responsibility that put the burden, the majority of the burden on the shoulder of the government. So the president has to show leadership. Presidential leadership is essential. It's an essential part of any viable democracy. And so that this president came to office without, even though with a clear mandate, but without any sense of direction at all. It's very troubling. So what you have now is a president who is very busy promoting his own selfish desires, whether that be constructing houses, private homes, whether that be in the area of satisfying himself in terms of, the opposite sex. That is something that, people look at. And so, the president needs to provide leadership. The president needs to be a president. He needs to be the captain of the ship. This is a country with a democracy that's very fragile. And so this is time for this president to provide leadership to Liberia, and leadership is needed now.
Thank you. Mr. Kunney, your concluding statement.
Okay, that the responsibility as to where the direction of our democracy falls on the people. It falls on the people represented in the various institutions, religious institutions, political parties, civil society organizations, interest group, pressure group. This is where I believe civic education should take place. This is where I believe conscientization should take place. This is where I believe public responsibility should be imparted to the people, so that with that knowledge, the people can be armed to elect the kind of government that represents their interests. I de-emphasize the role of the government if it means the president, because I do not subscribe to the notion of an imperial presidency. I subscribe to the notion of change has to come from the bottom to the top, and the Liberian people will have to empower themselves to take decisions that are in their own best interest, instead of waiting for a benevolent president who will award and reward him with things. That's the notion I totally reject. We're not going to have far-reaching changes in no society, really. I've had far-reaching changes, but all of the examples you make, the civil rights law, those things came at the heel of people who made real struggle, people who were brutalized, people who went to jail. That's brought those changes. And not a wishful thinking president sitting and say, okay, today let the black people vote or let that vote. And I also made reference to even our ability as Liberians to vote. That was curtailed by the Tulay party government. If you didn't have property in Liberia, you could not vote. Nobody gave it to the Liberian people willingly. It came at the toil and suffering of Liberians that organized, that pressured their government, that mobilized, that took political action, that built consciousness among their fellow Liberians to understand those issues and advocate for those issues. That's how change comes. And finally, let us always be reminded, the government is the reflection of the people. There is no government that is different from the people. The government is the reflection of the people. So this whole idea that the president is different from the people and we must all go to the president, I totally reject that notion. That doesn't mean that the president don't have a responsibility. I'm just saying, if we truly want to change our country, let us start from our different locations where we are located in a society and conscientize, organize, lead, inspire, and give our people hope, so that by understanding their conditions, they can take decisions for their own self-interest.
Thank you. We have one post from YouTube from Kismara Darling, say the Constitution should have been updated. This is undeniable. and somebody is giving me some flowers here. This
Instead
person
of
is,
bitter ball.
yeah, the person said, Dennis Jai, you are an excellent and knowledgeable host. Thank you, Anthony. Let's go to Joekai for your closing remarks.
With all our resourceful information, it is Dennis that the person saw to ignore. Oh,
You gotta be careful with
congratulations,
the
Dennis. I know I'm proud of you too. You know, the work that you guys do here is very much appreciated. Yeah, I must say that. Look, let me say here, as I indicated from the outset, that hey, in this arrangement of the political parties, the opposition, the government, and the people have a greater responsibility. Look, let's agree that we are having issues in our country right now. Some of the issues we are having, they were not just birthed during the tenure of Mr. Weir. But these are things that he committed to changing. And so he is being held, to that standard. And he is supposed to be here accountable for that. I do agree. But how does the change take place if he doesn't account? It's the people. So the people are fundamental. They need to rally. How did the change take place in Monserrate to have DeLong elected? It was a message that was sent to George Weah. It was a rally against George Weah. It was not the person, DeLong. They were sending a stronger message to George Weah. And in our political history, in 1997, what was the slogan of the election? You told Mama, you told my pa, I'll vote for you. In 2005, what was the slogan of the election? You know book, you don't know book, I will vote for you. That came on to 2017. You know book, you don't know book, I will vote for you. That's the kind of electorate you're talking about. And I said somewhere during the discussion that bad people elect bad officials. Bad electorate elect bad officials. That's what they do. Until we can improve the quality of the electorate in our country, we will always have bad leadership. And it's directly proportional. So I'm saying the people are responsible. The people will have to rise to the occasion to understand that government doesn't do them favor. Government is delivering upon their mandate until our people can understand that they need to hold people they elect to power accountable for their excesses and for their failures. It's not going to change. So the government herself is not going to deal with herself. The government will take pride in riding on the ignorance of the people and keeping themselves in power and amassing the wealth at the disadvantage of the people, indulging in all manners of corruption at the disadvantage of the people. They will do that until the people can institute that change. By putting the people who will put their interests first, things are not going to change in our country. That's why the people are responsible for the change that is supposed to happen. Whether or not is the opposition that is supposed to inspire and lead them, or is the religious community that is supposed to inspire and lead them, or traditional community that will inspire or lead them, or civil society that will inspire or lead them, but it's tied to the people. The people will have to institute a change. In political science, we have a theory called the stick and carrot theory. It says that when the leader does well, you give the leader the carrot. When the leader fails, you give the leader the stick. And if they can never give the leader the stick when they fail and continue to give the leader the carrot when they are failing, then things are not going to change in our country. So that's how we close with that statement that, hey, let's give leaders carrot when they deserve it. Let's give them the stick when they don't deserve the carrot. Thank you.
Thank you. Tomorrow at 6, we're going to have our literary hour with Dr. K. Moses Nawe and the scholar Jackie Saye. Creating a literary culture. That's the topic. You don't want to miss it. On Sunday, we're going to have our Mother's Day tribute. We encourage all of you to call in on Sunday and pay tribute to that mother in your life. It is happening right here on Focus on Liberia. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for the topic tonight. We really, really appreciate the discussion. We enjoy it so much that we could have gone on for hours, but we have to stop here for the night. We want to appreciate all our viewers, even those who are going to watch this later. Keep it here at Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Until then, whether you believe it is the government, the people, or the political parties, one thing we should not forget: we are all Liberians, and it is incumbent upon all of us to do whatever it takes to make our country the glorious land of liberty. Good night, and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.